the betrayal, broken bonds and shattered dreams, the healer's gentle heart. Arya Moonstone had always believed in the power of kindness. As the pack's primary healer, she spent her days tending to wounded wolves, brewing medicinal teas, and offering comfort to those in pain. Her small cottage at the edge of the Crimson Moon Pack territory was filled with dried herbs hanging from the ceiling, shelves lined with carefully labeled remedies, and the constant scent of lavender and chamomile. Despite being an Omega, the lowest rank in the pack hierarchy, Arya had carved out a place of purpose for herself. She had soft auburn hair that fell in waves past her shoulders, and gentle green eyes that seemed to hold endless compassion. Most wolves in the pack treated her with polite distance, the way one might acknowledge a useful tool but never truly see the person wielding it. But Arya didn't mind. She had learned long ago that respect wasn't given freely to Omegas. It had to be earned through service and silence. What kept her going, what made every difficult day worthwhile, was Marcus. Beta Marcus Thornheart, second in command to Alpha Victor, had been her secret source of hope for 5 long years. Their relationship had begun quietly, with stolen glances during pack meetings and brief conversations when he came to her for healing after patrol injuries. Over time, those moments had blossomed into something deeper, or so Arya had believed. A love built on whispered promises. Marcus was everything an Omega could dream of in a mate. Strong, handsome, with dark hair and striking blue eyes that seemed to see right through her defenses. He was respected throughout the pack, admired for his strategic mind and fierce loyalty. And somehow, impossibly, he had chosen her. Their meetings were always private, always careful. Marcus had explained early on that they needed to keep their relationship quiet until the right moment. The pack isn't ready to accept an Omega as the beta's mate, he had told her, his hand cupping her cheek tenderly. But I'm working on it, Arya. I'm building support, changing minds. Soon we'll be able to announce our bond to everyone. Just be patient with me. And Arya had been patient. She had waited through 5 years of secret meetings in the forest, of hidden touches and whispered words of love. She had endured the loneliness of watching him stand beside other she-wolves during pack celebrations, never able to claim her place at his side. She had swallowed her hurt when other Omegas gossiped about which high-ranking female Marcus might eventually choose as his mate. Through it all, she had held onto his promises. Marcus loved her. Marcus was working to make their relationship public. Marcus would stand up for her when the time was right. She just needed to wait a little longer, to be a little more patient, to prove herself a little more worthy. The Harvest Moon Festival. The Harvest Moon Festival was the most important celebration of the year for the Crimson Moon Pack. It marked the end of the hunting season and the beginning of winter preparations. The entire pack gathered in the ceremonial clearing, a wide space surrounded by ancient oak trees, their leaves turning gold and crimson in the autumn air. Arya had spent days preparing for the festival. She had made healing sachets for the elderly pack members who struggled with joint pain in the cold weather. She had brewed special teas to help the warriors recover from their intensive pre-winter training. And she had sewn herself a new dress, a simple but beautiful gown in deep forest green that brought out her eyes. Tonight felt different. Tonight felt important. Marcus had sent her a message earlier that week, asking her to meet him at the festival, suggesting that perhaps it was finally time to make their relationship known. Arya's heart had soared with hope. 5 years of waiting were finally coming to an end. As she arrived at the clearing, the festival was already in full swing. Torches lit the darkness, casting dancing shadows across the gathered wolves. Tables groaned under the weight of roasted meats, fresh bread, and autumn vegetables. Musicians played traditional songs while couples danced and children ran laughing through the crowd. Arya spotted Marcus immediately. He stood near the Alpha's platform, looking handsome in his formal beta attire. His dark jacket was embroidered with the pack symbol, and his posture radiated confidence and authority. Her heart beat faster as she made her way through the crowd toward him. The moment everything shattered. But as she got closer, Arya noticed something that made her steps falter. Standing beside Marcus was Elena Nightshade, Alpha Victor's daughter. Elena was everything Arya was not. Tall, confident, beautiful in an aggressive way that commanded attention. Her long black hair was styled elaborately, and her dress was made of expensive silk that shimmered in the torchlight. And Marcus's hand was resting on Elena's waist. Aria's breath caught in her throat. This had to be a misunderstanding. Perhaps it was just a formal greeting, nothing more. She continued forward, her smile becoming more uncertain with each step. Alpha Victor's voice boomed across the clearing, calling for attention. The music stopped. The dancing ceased. All eyes turned toward the platform where the Alpha stood with his daughter and Beta. "Wolves of the Crimson Moon Pack," Victor announced, his voice filled with pride. "Tonight, we celebrate not just the harvest moon, but a union that will strengthen our pack for generations to come. My daughter, Elena, has accepted Beta Marcus's proposal of mating. They will be bonded at the next full moon." The words hit Arya like a physical blow. The world seemed to tilt sideways, and she grabbed a nearby tree for support. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't be real. Marcus had promised her. He had said he loved her. He had told her to wait, that he was working toward their future together. Her eyes found Marcus in the crowd, silently begging him to deny it, to explain, to do something. For just a moment their gazes met, and in that moment, Arya saw the truth. There was no remorse in his eyes. No apology. Just cold calculation and perhaps a hint of relief that his secret was finally ending. Public humiliation. No. The word escaped Arya's lips before she could stop it. Barely a whisper, but somehow carrying in the sudden silence. Elena's sharp eyes found her immediately. "Did someone say something?" the Alpha's daughter asked, her voice dripping with false sweetness. Arya's hands trembled, but something inside her, some last desperate spark of hope, pushed her forward. She stepped into the clearing, into the circle of torchlight where everyone could see her. "Marcus," she said, her voice shaking but determined. Tell them about us, about our 5 years together, about your promises." The silence that followed was deafening. Then, slowly, cruelly, Marcus began to laugh. It wasn't a kind laugh or an embarrassed laugh. It was the laugh of someone who had been caught in a mildly amusing lie and found the whole situation entertaining rather than serious. "Us?" he repeated, his voice carrying to every wolf present. "Arya, I think you've misunderstood the nature of our interactions. Yes, you're a competent healer, and I've been grateful for your services over the years. But there has never been an US. Whatever fantasy you've constructed in your mind is exactly that, a fantasy." The words cut deeper than any blade. Arya felt her legs weaken, felt the tears burning behind her eyes. "But you said," she whispered, "all those times in the forest, all your promises, the desperate imagination of a lonely Omega." Elena interjected, her voice sharp with disdain. "How pathetic. Did you really think a Beta would mate with someone like you? You're nothing but a servant, a tool to be used when needed and forgotten when not." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Not everyone was laughing. Some faces showed pity or discomfort, but enough wolves joined in that the sound felt overwhelming, crushing. Arya looked around desperately, searching for even one friendly face, one person who might defend her or question Marcus's version of events. She found none. Even the wolves she had healed, whose children she had nursed through fevers, whose wounds she had tended, all of them looked away or joined the mocking laughter. The Alpha's judgment. Alpha Victor stepped forward, his expression stern. "Arya Moonstone," he said formally, using her full name like an accusation. "You have disrupted a sacred celebration with false claims and desperate attention-seeking. You have attempted to damage the reputation of my Beta and sow discord within the pack." "No, Arya tried to speak, but Victor cut her off with a raised hand. "Furthermore, your behavior suggests an instability that makes you unfit to serve as this pack's healer. Who knows what other delusions you might harbor? What if your confused state of mind leads you to harm someone under the guise of treatment?" "I would never," Arya protested, finding her voice even as tears streamed down her face. "I have served this pack faithfully for years. Every wolf here knows my healing is sound." "What we know," Elena said coldly, is that you're a manipulative Omega who has been using your position to get close to males above your station. Who knows what you've been putting in those teas of yours? What herbs might cloud judgment or create false feelings? The accusation was absurd, but Arya could see it taking root in the minds of the gathered wolves. Suspicion replaced pity in many eyes. Fear replaced discomfort. She was being transformed before the entire pack from a helpful healer into a dangerous threat. I call for her banishment, Elena declared, looking to her father for confirmation. Alpha Victor nodded slowly, as if considering carefully, though Arya could see the decision had already been made. Arya Moonstone, for the crime of disrupting pack harmony, for making false claims against a ranked member, and for the potential danger you pose to pack well-being, I hereby exile you from Crimson Moon Pack territory. You have until dawn to gather your belongings and leave. If you are found within our borders after sunrise, you will be treated as a rogue and dealt with accordingly. The lonely journey into darkness. Arya stumbled back to her cottage in a daze, barely aware of her surroundings. Behind her, she could hear the festival resuming, the music starting again, laughter and celebration continuing as if nothing had happened, as if her entire world hadn't just been destroyed. Inside her small home, she moved mechanically, gathering what few possessions she could carry. Her herb pouches, a change of clothes, a small knife for protection, a water skin. She looked around at the life she had built, at the dried herbs and carefully organized remedies, at the comfortable bed and worn furniture. All of it would be left behind. As dawn approached, Arya took one last look at the pack territory from the border. Somewhere in that collection of dens and cottages was Marcus, probably sleeping peacefully beside his new mate-to-be, unbothered by the Omega whose heart he had shattered. Somewhere in that pack were wolves she had healed, who had benefited from her kindness, and who had turned their backs on her without a second thought. She turned away and walked into the forbidden forest, into territory that belonged to rogues and wild beasts, into the unknown darkness that somehow seemed less frightening than the cruelty she was leaving behind. Survival in the wilderness. The first week was the hardest. Arya had never been trained as a warrior or hunter. Her Omega nature made her physically weaker than most wolves, and her skills lay in healing rather than fighting. She managed to catch small prey, fish from streams, and identify edible plants, but it was barely enough to survive. The nights were cold and lonely. She made rough shelters from branches and leaves, but they provided little comfort. Every howl in the distance made her jump, wondering if rogues had caught her scent. Every rustle in the undergrowth made her fear discovery by her former pack's patrol. But worse than the physical hardship was the emotional devastation. In the quiet moments between survival tasks, Arya's mind replayed every moment with Marcus, re-examining every word and gesture through the lens of her new understanding. Had he ever truly cared for her? Or had she been nothing but a convenient distraction, a toy to amuse himself with during boring patrol routes? The realization of how completely she had been used, how thoroughly she had been fooled, was almost more than she could bear. She had given him 5 years of her life, her complete devotion, her unwavering trust. And he had given her nothing but lies and eventual betrayal. The ancient ruins. On the 10th day of her exile, Arya stumbled upon something unexpected. Ancient ruins deep in the heart of the forbidden forest. Massive stone pillars covered in moss and strange symbols rose from the forest floor. What had once been buildings were now mere suggestions of walls and foundations, reclaimed by nature over countless years. The place felt sacred somehow, untouched by time and pack politics. Arya found herself drawn to the center of the ruins, where a circular stone platform was surrounded by 12 standing stones, each carved with intricate designs. She was examining one of the symbols, trying to decipher its meaning, when exhaustion suddenly overwhelmed her. The days of inadequate food and sleep, combined with the emotional trauma, finally caught up to her body. Her vision blurred. Her legs gave out. She collapsed onto the stone platform, barely conscious. As darkness closed in, Arya thought she heard footsteps approaching. Strong arms lifted her, and a deep voice spoke words she couldn't quite make out. She tried to open her eyes, to see who had found her, but consciousness slipped away. Her last thought before everything went black was a strange one. Instead of fear at being discovered, she felt an unexpected sense of safety, as if whoever had found her meant her no harm. A new dawn. When Arya woke, she found herself in a place that was neither pack territory nor wild forest. She was lying on a comfortable bed in a room carved partially from a cave and partially built from stone. Firelight danced on the walls, and the air smelled of pine and wood smoke. Sitting in a chair near the fire was a figure she couldn't quite see in the shadows. But she could feel the power radiating from him, an authority that made even Alpha Victor's presence seem weak by comparison. "You're awake," the figure said, his voice deep and surprisingly gentle. "Good. I was beginning to worry." "Who are you?" Arya managed to ask, her throat dry and voice hoarse. The figure leaned forward into the firelight, and Arya's breath caught. He was perhaps the most striking wolf she had ever seen. Dark hair fell to his shoulders, framing a face that was both beautiful and fierce. His eyes were an unusual amber color that seemed to glow in the dim light. Scars marked his exposed arms, evidence of countless battles, but they only added to his dangerous appeal. "My name is Damien," he said simply. "Damien Shadowfang. And before you panic, yes, I am the one they call the Rogue King." Arya's first instinct was fear. Everyone knew stories about Damien Shadowfang. He was the wolf who had killed an alpha and fled with a portion of that pack, forming a rogue group that answered to no council and followed no laws. He was dangerous, unpredictable, and according to every story, completely ruthless. But looking at him now, seeing the concern in his eyes and feeling the care with which he had obviously treated her injuries, Arya found herself questioning those stories. "Are you going to kill me?" she asked, deciding that directness was better than cowering in fear. Damien's lips curved into a slight smile. "If I wanted you dead, I wouldn't have spent the last 2 days making sure you survived. No, Arya Moonstone, I'm not going to kill you. In fact, I have a proposition for you." "How do you know my name?" "I know many things about the packs in this region, including the fact that the Crimson Moon Pack recently exiled their healer on false charges." His eyes darkened. "I also know why they really cast you out, though I doubt you realize it yet." Arya sat up slowly, pulling the blanket around her shoulders. "What do you mean?" Damien stood and walked to the mouth of the cave, looking out at the forest beyond. "There's something special about you, Arya. Something that scared Alpha Victor enough to orchestrate your removal from his pack. You're not just an Omega. You're descended from a bloodline that most wolves think died out centuries ago. I don't understand." He turned back to face her, and his expression was serious. "I'm offering you a choice. You can leave now, fully healed and with enough supplies to reach a distant pack that might take you in. Or you can stay here. Let me teach you about your true heritage and discover exactly what you're capable of." Arya looked at this stranger, this dangerous rogue king who somehow knew secrets about her that she didn't know herself. She thought about Marcus's betrayal, about her pack's cruelty, about everything she had lost. And then she thought about the possibility that maybe, just maybe, there was more to her story than being a disposable Omega. "Tell me more," she said quietly. "Tell me everything." Damien's smile widened, and in that moment, Arya felt the first stirring of something she hadn't felt in weeks. Hope, the transformation, rising from the ashes. The Rogue King's territory. Arya spent her first full day in Damien's territory simply observing. What she discovered challenged everything she had been taught about rogues. Instead of the chaotic, violent group she expected, she found an organized community of wolves who had all been rejected or exiled from their original packs for various reasons. There was Maya, a warrior female who had been cast out for refusing an arranged mating. There was Thomas, a young wolf born with a disability that his pack deemed worthless. There was old Sarah, a widow whose alpha had wanted to claim her property after her mate died. Each wolf had a story of injustice, and each had found refuge under Damien's protection. The camp itself was impressive. Built into a series of interconnected caves and stone structures, it was defensible yet comfortable. Training grounds occupied a large clearing where wolves practiced combat and hunting skills. Gardens grew medicinal herbs and vegetables. A communal hall served as a gathering place for meals and meetings. "This isn't what I expected," Arya admitted to Damien as he showed her around. He smiled knowingly. "Let me guess. You were told that rogues are savage beasts who live like animals and attack innocent travelers. Something like that. Convenient lies spread by alphas who want to discourage their pack members from questioning authority. The truth is, most rogues are simply wolves who refuse to accept injustice. We're the ones who said no when we should have stayed silent." He paused at the edge of the training ground. "The question is, are you ready to become one of us? Or do you still believe the lies your old pack fed you?" Arya watched as Maya sparred with another female warrior, their movements fluid and powerful. She thought about her own weakness, her inability to even feed herself properly in the forest. She thought about how easily she had been discarded by wolves she had served faithfully for years. "Teach me," she said firmly. "Teach me everything." Awakening strength. Training began the next morning before dawn. Damien himself took charge of Arya's education, which surprised the other pack members. The Rogue King rarely trained newcomers personally, usually delegating that task to his warriors. "We'll start with the basics," Damien said, standing in the center of the training ground. "Your Omega nature has conditioned you to be submissive, to avoid conflict, to make yourself small. We're going to reverse that conditioning." The first lesson was simply learning to stand her ground. Damien would approach her with his alpha aura fully extended, and Arya had to resist the instinctive urge to lower her eyes and submit. It was harder than it sounded. Every fiber of her being screamed at her to show submission to the powerful alpha before her. "Look at me," Damien commanded. "Meet my eyes. You are not beneath me, Arya. You are different, but not lesser." It took hours, but finally, Arya managed to hold his gaze without flinching. The victory felt small but significant. Physical training followed. Maya joined them, teaching Arya basic self-defense moves, how to block and attack, how to use an opponent's strength against them, how to exploit weaknesses. Arya was clumsy at first, her body unused to combat, but she persisted. "You're stronger than you think," Maya encouraged after Arya successfully completed a defensive sequence. "Your old pack never let you discover your true capabilities. They kept you weak on purpose." As weeks passed, Arya felt changes in her body. Her muscles grew stronger. Her reflexes quickened. Her confidence increased. But the physical changes were nothing compared to what happened when the old elder, Sarah, took an interest in her. The Silver Moon Legacy. Sarah was the pack's historian and spiritual advisor. She was the oldest wolf in the territory, her hair completely white, her face lined with age, but her eyes still sharp and knowing. She had been watching Arya carefully since her arrival. One evening, Sarah invited Arya to her private cave, which was filled with old books, scrolls, and artifacts. "Sit, child," Sarah said gently, gesturing to a cushion by the fire. "It's time you learned the truth about yourself." Arya sat, curious and slightly nervous. Sarah moved slowly, retrieving an ancient leather-bound book from a shelf. She opened it to a page marked with a faded ribbon. "Have you ever wondered why your healing abilities are so strong?" Sarah asked. "Why your remedies work better than those of other healers? Why wounded wolves recover faster under your care?" "I always assumed I was just thorough in my preparations," Arya replied. Sarah shook her head. "It's more than that. Tell me, have you ever noticed your hands growing warm when you treat serious injuries? Have you ever felt like you could sense exactly what was wrong with a patient before examining them?" Arya's eyes widened. She had experienced those things but had never mentioned them to anyone, afraid she would be seen as strange or dangerous. "How did you know?" "Because those are the gifts of the Silver Moon bloodline," Sarah said, her voice filled with reverence. "A lineage that dates back to the first wolves, blessed by the moon goddess herself. Your ancestors were powerful healers and leaders, Wolves who could sense illness and injury, who could accelerate healing with their touch, who commanded respect through wisdom rather than force. "But I'm just an Omega," Arya protested weakly. "No, child. You were classified as an Omega to keep you powerless. The Silver Moon bloodline doesn't follow normal pack hierarchy. Your kind exists outside of the Alpha, Beta, Omega structure. You're something else entirely. Something that scared Alpha Victor because he couldn't control you." Sarah turned the book around, showing Arya a drawing of a wolf with distinctive markings. "Look at the symbol here. Do you recognize it?" Arya leaned closer and gasped. The drawing showed a crescent moon birthmark on the wolf's left shoulder blade, identical to the mark she had always carried on her own body. She had been told it was just an unusual birthmark. Nothing more. "This can't be real," Arya whispered, touching her shoulder where the mark was hidden beneath her clothing. "It's very real, and Victor knew it. That's why he was so eager to exile you when the opportunity arose. A Silver Moon wolf in his pack was a threat to his authority. You could have challenged his leadership through the old laws that most alphas pretend no longer exist." Understanding Damien's past. As Arya absorbed this shocking information about her heritage, she also grew closer to Damien. He was nothing like Marcus had been. Where Marcus had hidden their relationship and made her feel ashamed, Damien treated her with open respect. Where Marcus had lied and manipulated, Damien was honest, sometimes brutally so. One night, after a particularly intense training session, Arya found Damien sitting alone on a cliff overlooking the forest. She approached quietly and sat beside him. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Always. The stories say you killed an alpha and fled with part of his pack. Is that true?" Damien was silent for a long moment. "Yes and no. I did kill an alpha. But it wasn't murder. It was justice." He stared out at the dark forest, his expression distant. "I was that alpha's son, his heir. I grew up watching him rule through fear and cruelty. He would execute wolves for minor infractions. He forced matings between wolves who had no choice. He treated Omegas as property to be used and discarded." Arya felt her heart ache at the pain in his voice. "When I came of age and started questioning his methods, he saw me as a threat. He ordered my true mate killed to prevent me from having any loyalty divided between him and a mate. Her name was Celeste. She was kind and gentle and didn't deserve what happened to her." "I'm so sorry," Arya whispered. "I challenged him formally, invoked the right of combat for leadership. I won. But his supporters claimed I had murdered him unjustly. Rather than fight a civil war that would destroy the pack, I took everyone who wanted to leave and came here. We built something better. A place where wolves are valued for who they are, not what rank they were born into." Damien finally turned to look at her. "That's why I helped you, Arya. Because I know what it's like to be rejected by those who should have protected you. And because I could sense something special in you from the moment I found you in those ruins. Growing bond and new abilities." As autumn turned to winter, Arya's transformation continued. She was no longer the timid Omega who had been cast out of her pack. She could fight, she could hunt, she could lead healing sessions for injured warriors. The other rogues had accepted her completely, respecting her growing skills and kind nature. But something else was developing too, something she tried to ignore at first. The connection between her and Damien was growing stronger. She found herself seeking his company, looking forward to their training sessions, feeling warm when he praised her progress. One day, while practicing advanced combat techniques, Damien caught her wrist to correct her stance. The moment his skin touched hers, a shock of electricity ran through both of them. Arya gasped, and Damien's eyes widened. "Did you feel that?" he asked, his voice rough. "Yes," Arya breathed. They stood frozen, hands still touching, both understanding what this meant. The mate bond. The true, fated connection that couldn't be forced or faked. After all her years wasting time on Marcus, believing in false promises, the universe was offering her something real. But Damien stepped back, putting distance between them. "Arya, I need you to understand something. I'm not going to pressure you into accepting this bond. You've been through trauma with Marcus. You need time to heal, to discover who you are without anyone influencing you. The mate bond will still be there when you're ready, if you ever are. His consideration, his willingness to put her healing before his own desires, only made Arya care for him more. But she recognized the wisdom in his words. She did need time to become her own person first. "Thank you," she said softly, "for understanding." The message from the past. Winter's deepest months brought an unexpected visitor. A young wolf arrived at the camp, half-frozen and exhausted, carrying an urgent message. He was from a neutral pack that had connections with multiple territories. Damien read the message and his expression darkened. He called Arya to his private chamber. "News from your old pack," he said, handing her the letter. Arya read it with shaking hands. Marcus and Elena were to be formally mated at the next full moon, which was only 3 weeks away. The ceremony would take place during the annual Alpha Summit, a gathering where all the regional alphas met to discuss territory and alliances. It was the most prestigious event of the year. "Why are you showing me this?" Arya asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Because you have a choice to make," Damien said. "You could stay here, safe and hidden, building your new life. Or you could return. Not for revenge, though the moon goddess knows you'd be entitled to it, but to reclaim what was stolen from you. Your dignity, your voice, your right to stand as an equal among wolves." Arya thought about Marcus, about the humiliation she had suffered, about the pack that had turned its back on her. Then she thought about who she had become. Stronger, wiser, more confident. "If I go back," she said slowly, "it won't be to beg for acceptance or to prove anything to Marcus. It would be to show every Omega, every wolf who has been told they're worthless, that they have power, that they can rise above what others say about them." Damien smiled. "That's exactly the right reason. Preparation for return." The next 3 weeks were intensive. Damien worked with Arya to perfect her combat skills. Sarah taught her about Silver Moon traditions and the old laws that most packs had forgotten. Maya helped her develop a presence that commanded respect rather than submission. "You're not just going back as yourself," Sarah explained. "You're going as my Luna, as Damien's mate. That means you represent all of us. Every rogue who was rejected and found strength in adversity." The mate bond revelation came during a private ceremony with Sarah officiating. Both Arya and Damien had felt it for weeks, but they had waited until Arya was certain she was choosing Damien for himself, not as a rebound from Marcus or as protection from her fears. When they finally accepted the bond fully, the connection was overwhelming. Arya could feel Damien's emotions, his thoughts, his absolute devotion to her, and he could feel hers. Her growing love, her determination, her transformation from broken Omega to confident Luna. "Are you ready for this?" Damien asked the night before they were to leave for the Alpha Summit. Arya stood before a mirror, looking at her reflection. She barely recognized the wolf staring back at her. Her eyes held confidence. Her posture radiated strength. Her healing abilities had manifested in a subtle glow that seemed to surround her. She was wearing a dress that Sarah had made, deep midnight blue that brought out the silver tones in her auburn hair. Around her neck hung a pendant bearing the silver moon symbol, announcing her heritage to anyone who knew the old traditions.